Hi, this video is due to be a video to help you with the assessment number 1 for SP5354, where you're required to produce a 15-minute video presentation which utilizes an appropriate electronic software such as PowerPoint, Windows Movie Maker, iMovie, Prezi, anything that you are happy using in terms of an electronic piece of software. And the aim of the presentation is to demonstrate the different considerations, and that's physiological, biomechanical and psychological, that will be required to improve performance for the athlete chosen within one of the scenarios. As I mentioned earlier on in the semester, you're able to pick a scenario of your own if you would like to. Please let me know if that's the case. In terms of the assessment itself, I did have a question about what's the difference between this assessment and the assessment from level 4. I would say the main difference is the fact that the level 4 assessment is an assessment of the sport itself, whereas this one is an assessment of the performer. So the emphasis is definitely on the performer in this one, even though you need to show an understanding of the needs of the sport. So the first one is about an academy-based 14-year-old young footballer, recently joined a new team, moving up 2 divisions, expecting a harder test of his physical fitness, and believes that the matches he plays may move too fast for him. So he's got 16 weeks between April and the start of the season in August to prepare himself. So what we need to consider here is what are the needs of the sport for him as an individual, and where are his strengths and weaknesses. So this is where you can provide some extra information. So for example, you may want to provide me with some fitness test results that you may have taken with him, and you can then show his strengths and weaknesses. So for example, with this scenario, you may want to look at the fact that in order to play football is a high-intensity, intermittent game which involves a lot of high-intensity running followed by periods of rest, where you're going to be walking or possibly jogging. So you're going to need to have a fairly high level of cardiovascular endurance, but you will also need to be able to repeat high-intensity sprints. So the different levels of the energy systems that are involved, you will need to highlight. But as I say, the emphasis is on the individual. So you might tell me he's got strengths within the cardiovascular element, but he needs to improve on his speed. Or he might have strengths in his speed, but may want to improve on his cardiovascular endurance. So you can fill in some of the blanks that are going to exist. The scenario is just there to set the scene, but it's not there to fill all the gaps, and that's what I'd like you to do a little bit more, is really tell me as much about this performer as possible in terms of the physiological, the biomechanical and the psychological. So it might be that the fact that he's believes that the matches he plays in may move too fast for him might be actually a confidence issue as much as anything. However, improving his physiological abilities might actually give him confidence in terms of those psychological abilities as well. Scenario 2 is a talented 15-year-old swimmer ready to return to training following an 8-week break due to a dislocated shoulder. Before the injury, she was confident in her endurance and strength towards the end of the race, but now fears that any progress has been lost because of the injury. Again, 16 weeks' time to compete in the national championships. So here, we obviously need to understand the name of the needs of the sport. We're looking at swimming. Now you can tell me what distance that swimming is. Is it a long distance? Is it a sprint, etc.? In terms of being a talented swimmer, we know that obviously she's going to have very good abilities in terms of the needs of that. However, the interesting thing here is obviously the dislocated shoulder. So what I would like you to do for, if you choose this one, is to actually look at the needs of rehabilitation from a dislocated shoulder. What do we need to be able to do to get her back to full fitness, ready to compete in the national championships. The last one is a 17-year-old cyclist preparing to return to training following a winter break, and wishes this year to really push on to becoming part of the squad for the World Road Race Championships. Last year they struggled due to persistent knee and hip issues, particularly toward the latter part of a race. Again, 16 weeks to prepare for the national trials. I would imagine here that you would be looking more specifically at the biomechanical needs of cycling. If there's an issue with the knee and the hip, then potentially we need to look at the mechanics of cycling and see where potentially they're going wrong. As with the other scenarios, the scenario isn't a full scenario. There are blanks for you to fill in. So you might want to investigate the biomechanical needs and fill in some of the data that you feel that you would need to be able to answer this fully. I'll do a session on this also within one of the taught sessions, and I'll also speak to Debbie as well. But if you've got any questions at any time, please just email me and I'll be happy to try and answer any questions. Hope that helps. Cheers. Bye.